Jeffer Brooks writes, do you have trouble with making all of your elements on a scrapbook page feel connected? Sometimes it's the title, other times the journaling, or an embellishment cluster that just feels like it's floating all alone. Any idea how I can make all of the elements on a page feel connected? Glitter Girl, can you help Jeffer Brooks connect the crafty components?
Of course I can. Today I'm going to be working on a page in my album that's all pink and turquoise. So I've pulled out all sorts of different supplies that include those two colors, some different shades of aqua and turquoise, and then some hot pink as well. I've got lots of different papers that'll keep whole, papers that'll cut apart into smaller pieces, some flat letter stickers and some thickers, a set of stamps, a set of different stickers to embellish, and some pink polka dot washi tape. So that should be enough to do quite a bit on the page. And I'm going to use two Instagram prints printed as Polaroids by Origami. And the idea that we're going to start with is let's figure this out in two parts. Let's first look at that idea of have everything having a place where it belongs. And then secondly, making sure that all those things connect and form one nice cohesive design. Let's start right from the very beginning with making sure that everything we add to the page has some sort of purpose, and that doesn't mean that it has to be some sort of necessity and everything else has to be pulled back. But what I mean is that when I'm adding something to the page, I'm thinking about what it is that I want to accomplish with that addition. So that starts with my very two first pieces of paper that I add to the page. No matter what design I'm using, I try to make sure that my first two pieces of paper define the color scheme for the page. In this case, I want it to be aqua with shades of turquoise and pink. So I've added my main aqua piece of paper first. That's from Dear Lizzie's Lucky Charm collection. And then some pink from crepe paper in the background. Now, in this case, I've done it with the small frame around the edge, but it could be any design that I wanted to do. It doesn't have to be that particular frame. Other thing to keep in mind is that here I'm talking about color more than pattern. You know that my preference is to use pattern papers, especially when I can use single colored, small repeating patterns like both of these, because they act as solids even though they have more texture and detail. But I know that not everybody's style is to have so many patterns on the page, and many people don't like that look at all. That's absolutely fine. The same idea goes if you're using solid colors. Just make sure that the first two solid color sheets that you put together on your page are the two that are going to help you define your color scheme, and then you can add things from there. I tend to then next go to one large block of paper. It might be a vertical strip that's going to go all the way across the paper, or it might be a large horizontal box. In this case, that's what it's going to be. So I have my darker aqua shade here, and I've cut this to be smaller than the aqua in the background here. And I'm just going to choose a placement. I could build a page composition with everything up here at the top. I could put it right in the center. I'm going to go just a little bit below the center. I don't want it quite right at the bottom, but a little bit below that. This one is from Echo Park. I'll just center that, and I can use the stripes in the background to attempt to get that straight. Didn't do a very good job of it. It's a bit better. So now I'm introducing that idea that I want to have shades of the same color. So I have that color here, and then a more intense, a darker shade in the same color. So each thing I'm adding has a purpose. Also, my large block that I add in that early step is almost always to help bring attention to my photos. So wherever I'm putting that large block is where I'm going to build the composition and include the pictures. I'm going to go ahead and figure out where I want the pictures to sit. I have these two, and I can have them either kind of at a jaunty angle, a little bit at the bottom of the box here. I could bring them up, and in this case, I think I'm going to go nice and straight with them centered in the box but over to the side, which then gives me a nice obvious place to add more stuff over here. And I can have a look at the different things that I want to add in terms of embellishment before I start sticking anything, so that I can at least figure out in my mind where all of the large elements and the major things that are going to catch your eye are going to go. So I have a few things here that I have cut apart from the different cut apart sheets. So I have a 4x6 piece from Echo Park. I have this Polaroid piece, which is from an Adrian Lumen for Webster's Pages paper that has all these different Polaroids and some tags. The other side has an all-over print. So I just chose the Polaroid that would match the color scheme here and thought because these are the look of Polaroids that I'll just emphasize that by picking other things that might carry on that design. And these are also from the same Adrian Lumen collection. They're just cutouts from a sheet that has all different bits and pieces, including 2 6x6 squares and then all these little embellishments that you can cut apart and a pretty little brightly colored raindrop pattern on the other side. So I want to figure out where these elements can go before I just start adding them in, because I know these are kind of the major elements I want to include, plus a title, and then I'll get my journaling somehow worked in with these as well. If I'm thinking that the photos can go here nice and evenly, my eye naturally goes to this side, and what I'd like to do is bring this over to the edge so that I'm looking at these layers here. By placing this, so it goes underneath the photo, it's not going to read like a separate element, it's going to read that it's related to the pictures. It's also going to help your eye flow across the page. And what I want to do is, instead of bringing it in here, which would also work, there's not necessarily a problem with this part of the design, and perhaps if I really wanted more of my attention to go to that word, this would be a good placement, because having the dark frame around the edge brings your eye more to that block and the word there. But what I want to do is have it feel like this is one fluid motion across the page. If I bring it over to the side but not completely flush to the edge, then the layers underneath here, I'm looking for it to overlap each of these different things so that you can see all the different layers. And that tiny little step of bringing this over to the edge then helps connect all those things and make it flow really smoothly without you really having to comprehend that there are all these different elements there. So it just makes it start to be a little bit smoother on the eye, even though there's lots of elements involved. Now, as I start to add the other elements, I can make decisions about where the composition is going to go. If it's all going to be here on the horizontal, where I could add more embellishment to this space, maybe add my title here or below the photos here, and add my journaling maybe to the side of the title here. And then everything would still be in this horizontal block. Or if I want to move so that the line continues somewhere else around the page, if it starts up here and then comes down like an L shape, or if it starts here and then moves up, anything like that. I can move different things around on the page until I find the place that makes me happy with the composition. The next largest element that I had cut out and ready to go was that aqua Polaroid. So I can start here by what I already have on the page, because just like I want this piece to cross all those layers, I'm looking for places that I can add things so that everything will feel like it's part of the same design, which means that it will really help if the pieces are overlapped and having these little edges showing. So if I place this here so that you can read the words, this is too large, it's going to cover up too much of the picture. So that's not a particularly great choice for me. I could bring it up here, but now I think that if I run a column up this side of the page, it doesn't feel particularly balanced to me, because it makes me feel like all the photos are over here and all the paper elements that I've cut out are over here. So what if I move, instead of on this corner, I take it across and move it up? Well, I like this placement better, and I like the idea of it being up here somewhere, but I don't want it to just be floating, because that's going to give me the same problem that you're having already, that where things don't feel like they're all cohesive and part of the same design. So what I then start to look for are ways to connect the different elements. This is a great place to use a 6x6 paper pad. So I pulled out this one from Collectible by My Mind's Eye and chose a pale pink. I didn't want to go with the bright pink again because I know I have my bright pink letters coming up, and I want to make sure that my bright pink is still going to be legible and obvious. I don't want it to be a page that's all about hot pink suddenly. So the paler shade works a bit better. And I can take this box, which I've cut down from 6 by 6. I can run it underneath that large, darker aqua box. And now I can have this L shape here. And what I'm trying to do is line this up between the edge of the print, the white edge, and the black edge of the photo, so that it's in between there. And then it'll be the same on this side. Again, using the stripes to line that up at the top. And now I start to have this composition, and now if I work on this space, it's going to feel a bit more like whatever I add here, like this Polaroid, is going to be connected to the design and not just floating around in the page. Now, I still think that if I put this square in the middle, that feels a bit too floaty for my liking. So what I'd like to do is bring it closer to the photos, closer to that this box here. And I again am going to decide, do I want it to be straight on or do I want it angled? And this is a great spot for me to take my other paper elements and decide where they're going to go, because that will help me decide if it looks best to have an angle or have it all straightened up. Now, if I bring in my other elements here, the other paper pieces that I've cut out, I'm thinking of what purpose I want to, why I want to include each one. And when I cut out the word summer, I was thinking I could use it as part of my title, which I would then finish with letter stickers. So I know that I want the word summer to be legible and also to have space that I can add more wording to finish the title. So I can think of that when I'm coming in here to decide if I want this Polaroid to be nice and straight and even or on the angle. Because if I place this on the angle, then, and I want this in the same sort of area. If I put this on an angle, this angle here I don't mind so much. I think that's quite okay and looks nice as a bit of embellishment. But I'm not keen on the title being on an angle as well. I think it's going to make it hard to read, and I think all this little space in here gets a bit messy. Yes, I'm doing that same thing where you can see all the different layers, but I don't think it works in as nice a way as, say, this little area here. If I straighten this back up, then the wording is really easy to read. These layers seem a lot more pleasing to the eye. So at this point, I'm thinking that the straighter placement is a better option. Before I add anything with adhesive, though, I can move a few more pieces around to see if I'll continue with that frame of mine. So I could put these back at an angle and add in this maybe at the opposite angle to see if I like this. And a composition like this, maybe without this bit of trap space here, but with all these different kind of angles, and they're not huge angles, but they're obvious. They're clearly not just straight lines at 90 degrees. And this sort of grouping would work really well on a youthful page where I want it to look like everything has a lot of energy. Maybe if there are pictures of jumping into the pool, for example. I think that's a great sort of case where having things at angles will help tell the story and help it feel like everything is really, really energetic and kind of jump up and that sort of thing. But if it's a little bit more relaxed, I like the idea of having them here at straight lines because that's more relaxed on your eye. The energy level is lower, and that's exactly what is happening in these photos. If I use the same shape up here as down here, even though they're different colors, I think it's nice to duplicate the placement. So I'm not going to put one on an angle and the other one straight. I'm going to go ahead and leave this one straight as well. I think I'm happy with most of this here, but before I adhere it, I want to look at my stamps and my stickers because I want to use my letter stickers with the block here to create the title. And what I'd also like to do is bring in a border stamp. So these are the Allison Craft Camera and Arrows border stamps from Webster's Pages. And they have some lovely little borders here that are pointed. They're kind of just one row of chevron. And I like the idea of stamping something here and putting the letter stickers on top of that, because then it will bridge the gap between these kind of horizontal elements, this horizontal element leading to this vertical contrast piece here. And this isn't going to be on top or overlapping. With stamps, I like to give them that little bit of room. And what I'll do is I don't want the stamp to go onto the pink here, so I'll place a post-it note on the pink so that I can stamp just on the aqua. And then making a decision, do I want this stamp to end and point toward the summer block, or would I rather it be continuing so that it looks like it goes all the way across the page, and then adhere this summer over the top of the stamp design. And I do think that's my preference here, because I want the writing with the additional stamps here to read really fluidly as if it's all one thing. So instead of having that gap in between that's going to make it feel like this is one word and this is a second word, if I bring it all together, having the arrows point that way but also not end, just go underneath that layer, is going to help the pink wording over here read right into that title block. Hopefully now with the stamp and all the lettering in place, you can read this from the small letters to the glitter and onto the large box. My next step is to stop before I go on and make sure that everything that's on the page has a purpose that I want to include. And I really like the wording in these two. That's why I chose those two banners to help tell the story that I'm going to journal. But I'm not completely convinced by this motif here, because of the separate color and because it doesn't really match anything in my story or the pictures. I looked through my die cuts to see if I could find something that would fit this space and not cover up the fact that it's the Polaroid frame. And I came up with this little die cut from Dear Lizzie Fifth and Frolic that has quite a lot of neutral, but also a splash of the pink and aqua. There's also a little bit of yellow here to pick up on the yellow that's in these flowers and this banner here. So that works quite well, and I can just line that up. I don't have to stop and think now about whether I'm going to go on an angle or not, because I've already made that decision and I'm just going to stick with it for the whole project. But at this point, I need to include my writing. I'm going to journal in this space here and also a little bit in this bottom corner. And then I want to add a little bit more to the embellishment. Although there's some dimension here in the title, at the moment all the embellishment is very flat and very similar in texture. It's all just paper layers on top of each other. And I want to add a little bit of something that will make that a bit more exciting. There's my journaling all in place, so I know that I'm not going to run out of room to tell the story that I wanted to tell as soon as I picked those photos. And now I can go on to the embellishment, and that leaves me free to include as much or as little as I want, and I can start to look for different particular places that feel like they might need something special. One thing I'd like to do is add a little bit of dimension, nothing that's huge, but something small, to where the journaling starts, because I feel these arrows help bring your attention to the title, but I'd like something that brings your attention to the start of the journaling. So I started looking through the different sticker sheets I'd pulled out, and I think I can work with something really small like this little banner sticker here, which is from the Echo Park Here and Now sticker sheet. But by putting it on a pop dot and just adding that tiny little bit of black around the edge is just enough to point your eye toward where the writing starts. And because this writing is on the vertical, I like the idea of bringing something else into that vertical as well. And the same sticker sheet includes this small chevron piece. And I just thought that this was a nice piece to bridge the gap between this collection, which has this all caps kind of weathered font, which appears here, and the stamp that I used up here with the arrows in black. So this should hopefully bring your eye up to the start of the journaling to read down to the bottom. Then I also would like to include something that uses these three shots of pink meaning I wanted to bring some hot pink into here. When I'm looking to make sure that things look like they belong, I often use that triangle guideline, where I have 3 different places where I'm using the same color or the same motif. And if I look at them, they should form some sort of triangle, and I try to keep the triangle so that it goes around the most important elements of the page. So that would normally be the photos and the journaling. It can be a really large triangle, so I could have had some embellishment down here that was hot pink, and that would bring me into a triangle that went from here. But instead, I'm using my journaling there. I'm thinking that I could just add a little bit of hot pink up here and have this triangle. It's admittedly of a different size, but that's absolutely fine. And I can do that with a really simple pink sticker. And again, I'm looking at all the different layers here. How many layers can I cross with that particular sticker? And again, it's on pop dots so that I have a little bit of variety to the dimension there. But this spot here, it's not enough that I want to add a whole embellishment cluster, but where the wording naturally stopped, where the lines naturally stopped, but where this one I needed a little bit more room to fill in the last letter or last word of the writing, I have ended up with this little gap here. And what I'd like to do is make that gap seem like it's not so awkward. And I can do that by choosing an element on the page that I can repeat. So the element that I haven't repeated here is this stamp. So I can add that same stamp into this space here so that it will point in toward the journaling. And I can even double it if it looks like I still have an awkward gap there. And I can do that in the same ink color that I used up here, and it will naturally then frame the photos. So just like I used this triangle and I want the important stuff in between, if I'm doing it with just 2 things that I'm repeating, I want it either side of the important stuff in the middle. At this point, you might be happy with that amount of embellishment and you'd stop right there and not add any more. But I don't think it means that you can't add any more if your style is a bit more embellished. What I like to look at for finishing touches are things that will add a slightly different texture to the finished page. And although their purpose is a little bit different than, say, the photos and the journaling, I'm still looking for them to have a purpose on the page. So remember, I included some washi tape right at the beginning because the texture in washi tape is different than a pattern paper or sticker. And what I want to do is bring in a little bit more hot pink here so that this definitely catches your eye as that 3rd placement of the hot pink. So I'm just going to add that up here at the top, and I could also make it smaller and attach it just here. Let me try that. I think either would work, but I like the idea of perhaps having the hot pink here of the tape closer to the hot pink of that sticker. But I think the width of this tape is going to be too wide for that little die cut. I don't want it to seem too awkward, so I'll just cut it down to a smaller piece and center that on the top, and I like that a lot better. So that gives me something that brings in that same color in the same place, so it has a purpose. Also, it covers that purpose of wanting to add more texture to my pages because that's something that I really like in my albums. And then, of course, I often use a finishing touch like enamel dots or gems, sequins, something that I can kind of sprinkle over the page. You can also use buttons or ink droplets or anything like that that's kind of small that you can place here and there. Brads, of course, also work. Now, I was going to go with turquoise enamel dots, but surprise, surprise, I used so many that I actually have completely run out of turquoise enamel dots. This was the best match I could find for the colors I'd used, and those are pink doodlebug pearls, not gems, pearls. So I want to then figure out where would be the best place. Where can these pearls have purpose? I'm not just adding stuff onto the page to pile it on. Sometimes it might look like that, but I like to create layouts that have lots of embellishment, but those embellishments all have a little reason why they're there. So in this case, I want to help direct your eye with the texture, just like I did with the placement of the title and this building of a triangle, repeating the stamp. Everything that I'm putting together has something in mind, and that helps it all have that connected feeling that you're looking for. So I'm going to then take my pearls and figure out what little triangle I can make with them. What I'd like to do is add some down here to the stamped little area here, because I think that will be a little better design with some pearl there. And I do tend to use 3 of these at a time, so I'll just put them in a little triangle there. And then I could mimic that up here with the other occurrence of that same stamp. But because this is all emphasizing that horizontal, I don't want to do a triangle here. I'd rather do them all in a straight line, which is easy enough to do because I can just line them up with the bottom of the stamped design, the border stamp. And then I can have a look and figure out where else would I want to include them. And I actually like the idea of coming back up here to that washi tape that I placed earlier. And just adding a few here to mimic the little polka dots in the tape. So it's really, really simple placement and simple embellishments, but not over. Each one has a thought that goes behind it, but then I stop and I try not to overthink it. So I could sit here and come up with the exact right placement of the pearls in this area of the page for an hour, but that's not worth it to me. I'd rather go with that initial idea of going, okay, that works, and placing them there. So this is where I'm going to call this page finished, but of course you could continue to add more embellishment. You could look at building up this floral design with lots of little details on top. You could come back and make some sort of more detailed piece here with little borders that would be delicate underneath here and layer that up a little bit more. Or you could pare back and not include the tape and the pearls and maybe not even the extra little stickers there. It's completely up to you, but I hope that that will help your process with getting things to feel like they're connected and they have a place on the page by just taking it one step at a time and wondering, okay, I have this element that I want to include on my page. Where can I place it with purpose, and how can I connect it to the other elements? And almost always that answer of how can I connect it to the other elements is going to be to have it touch another element on the page. So you'll end up with more layers perhaps, but you can still see that there's not an overwhelming amount of paper used on this page. It's not just one sheet, no, but it doesn't use a whole collection pack or anything on one layout, so it's not too extreme, and I hope you can give it a try. Your challenge this week is to create a page that you feel has a connected design, and in the layout description box, please make sure to tell us what tips you use to make sure that your design feels like it has purpose and feels comforting and connected to your eye. I hope you enjoy, and I can't wait to see what you make in the gallery. Thanks for watching.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopiesinAbucket.com.